Hi, everybody. Welcome to our first session in our summer literacy training. My name is Megan Rader, and I am a first grade teacher from Michigan. And I'm very happy to be joining you all tonight. I got introduced through with Brain Friendly Reading when they came to my school district last year and presented their wonderful training. And I got hooked right away and started implementing everything in my classroom and was pretty much blown away by the results that I was getting with my students with honestly not much effort or in terms of like prep and things like that. And I became certified and I have not anything negative to say about this training or this program. So I think you guys are in for a treat and we'll get a lot out of it. I see somebody through the chat even is doing it in Hebrew, which is amazing. I love it. That's awesome. So tonight I am excited to present Kristen Dwyer, who is the brains behind this operation here. She co-authored Brain Friendly Reading with somebody else after seeing the immense need that we have to support these struggling readers through something that is simple and evidence-based and direct. And it is structured and she did a wonderful job getting all of these materials and these trainings ready. It's available for teachers, it's available for tutors or for parents. She has also founded the literacy nonprofit We Shall Read, which has presented all of these trainings to you this summer. And I am going to hand it on over to Kristen. If during the presentation, if there's any questions or anything that you need, put them in the chat and I will be happy to help you out once we have some time.
Thanks, Megan. We're really excited to be here the next 2 weeks and share with you the Brain Friendly Reading Program. So I am Kristen Dwyer and I founded We Shall Read really with one goal in mind, and that was to help people who work with kiddos, like I'm assuming you do or you wouldn't be here, maybe they're your own children, to get some really practical tools in your toolbox that you can use to help move children up the ladder of reading. So if you're just jumping on and you found a Zoom link and you came to this training, let me orient you for just a minute. Brain Friendly Reading is a systematic phonics program. And what we intend to do over the next 4 nights or 4 nights this week and 4 nights next week, it'll be 8 hours of instruction or, maybe less than an hour of instruction and some Q&A. We're going to introduce you to some of the key strategies that we use in the Brain Friendly Reading program. You might recognize some of these instructional strategies. We didn't invent them all. What we did was look at all the instructional strategies that were available that are evidence-based, that match the science of reading, that body of literature. And we picked the ones over many, many years of, let's call it field testing, of working with children, over many years of working with children, that were straightforward for teachers to use and parents to learn, and for tutors to have success with working with kiddos and helping their parents to become empowered. We picked those strategies. We worked with what a sequence would look like that would touch all the major pieces that we knew needed to be there in order to help those kids move up the ladder of reading. And then we decided it needed to be barrier free. So We Shall Read is a literacy nonprofit. It's a 501c3. So when you're on that website, know that all those things are brought to you through individual donations and grant funding and the like. All right, so tonight we're going to cover phonological and phonemic awareness activities. These are things that we typically do with really young children, but sometimes older children come to us with gaps in their learning and they need to have this information. But before we jump into those strategies, let's spend a few minutes talking about the science of reading and where we are as a nation. This is the ladder of reading and writing. It was put together by Nancy Young several years ago, but it just gives you a really quick way to look at where we're at as a nation with our reading efficacy. Those kiddos at the top, that 5 to 10% at the top, those are the ones who learn to read effortlessly. Those are the ones who are reading at 3 years old. The next group are the ones who could probably learn to read given any type of reading instruction. They don't need many repetitions with seeing a word before they store it into long-term memory, maybe just 4, 8, 10 repetitions. But once we get down to the children in the orange zone, those are children who really have to have a structured literacy approach. And that's what brain-friendly reading is. It's a structured literacy approach to teaching children how to read that is systematic and explicit and multisensory. Those children absolutely must have it. So when you're hearing teachers talk about the success they're having with children, they're primarily talking about kids in the orange zone who, when they're given the strategies that we're going to teach you over the next 8 nights, they start to be able to break the code. At the bottom of the chart, we have the children in the red zone, and those might be children who are diagnosed or undiagnosed dyslexics or have other issues that might qualify them for special education. And those children, wonderfully, also need the exact same instruction that the children in the orange zone need. That instruction benefits the kids in the green zone. So our dyslexic children benefit from this work as well. The difference is that sometimes those children need as many as 200 repetitions with the same material. So when you're thinking, I've taught you this, I've reviewed it a million times, they just need a million times more when you're using instructional strategies like the ones in the Brain Friendly Reading Program. And if you're wondering how we got ourselves into this situation where 65% of our children for decades have been reading below grade level, go listen to the Sold a Story podcast by Emily Hanford. She spent years researching it, putting it together, and it will pull back any veil that you have around balanced literacy instruction and help you to understand the forces at play that created the reading instruction environment we have and the curriculum that is predominantly used throughout the United States. This is a slide that comes from a YouTube video called How the Brain Learns to Read by Stanislas Dehaene, who's a French, hopefully I said that right, who's a French cognitive neuroscientist. And he's been studying how the brain learns to read. His books are dense and thick and full of excellent information and challenging to get through. The conclusion of his work is encapsulated in this slide, that reading in all cultures relies on the same brain mechanisms, that the brain learns how to read one way. And that when we teach letter sound correspondences, that the children have the foundational skills that they need to support reading. Now, letter sound correspondences are great. Tonight, we're going to talk about some of the pieces that some children need. Really, all children need them, but many of them are developed before elementary school. We're going to talk about those pieces. And tomorrow, we're going to really address how to grow those sound, symbol, or letter sound correspondences. And the beautiful thing about knowing those letter sound correspondences, he says that once they are learned, that self-teaching can occur, that children can begin to decipher words and recognize them auditorily. That means using their ears. I usually tell a story at this point about a boy that I tutored who recognized the word Dodge Charger. He was severely dyslexic and had been tapping all of his sound symbol charts that we're going to talk about tomorrow. And he saw the car and he said, "Mom, isn't that a Dodge Charger?" And she said, "I don't know cars, you do." And he said, "No, I mean, doesn't that say Dodge Charger?" And because he'd been tapping his charts, he was able to sound out Dodge and Charger. Isn't that incredible? Even though in the books that he was reading, he was still reading primarily consonant, vowel, consonant words, some blends, H brothers, and some vowel, consonant, E work. So here's Scarborough's reading rope. And if you haven't seen a video on the reading rope, I would encourage you to go watch it. I'm not going to repeat all that information here. There's fabulous free YouTube videos for you to learn about this research. What's important for you to see is that there are many different pieces of learning that a child must have in order to become a skilled reader. The piece that brain-friendly reading really focuses on is that bottom part, but we also work with the child in developing vocabulary and helping them to develop comprehension, being able to work on fluency, and some of those other skills. Today, we're going to focus on in this house of structured literacy. These are all the different pieces that one might consider. Today, we're focusing on what's in the basement, the sounds only section. That when we're talking about what skills does a child need, ideally before they enter kindergarten, but that's not always the case, my kindergarten teachers would say. And my first grade teachers would probably say that they have children who don't have proficiency with all of these, that the skills that the children need or the things they need to do or parents need to do with them to help them grow their phonological skills, phono means sound, are things like listening to stories and singing many different songs, listening to poetry being read to them where they hear the rhymes, or books where there's a lot of alliteration. That means the first letter of the sentence, of every word in the sentence, or many words in the sentence sound the same. Clapping syllables, like clapping their names, which is very simple. It's just taking a word like table and clapping those syllables. Children begin to hear the beats in our words. And then they take words like bug and they're able to break the word down into its sounds. Identifying each individual sound is a process in a word. Some children seem to do it really easily, and other children really struggle. My friends who said to a child, oh, I'm going to say a word and see if you can tell me what it is. At, and the child says apple. Those are children who are not hearing sounds and blending them together orally. So that blending of sounds together to make a word, and then taking a word and breaking those sounds apart, that's the segmenting. All of those oral skills are what prepare a child to be able to do that work when we introduce letters. And the aha moment for a lot of kindergarten teachers is that a child isn't really ready to read until they can orally blend and orally segment words. So today we're focusing on what's in the basement. We're going to spend a couple of sections looking at letter sound connections, not only for the alphabet, but also for consonant blends and H brothers and vowel teams and R-controlled vowels. And then all the pieces on the floor there of segmenting words and blending words into sounds. We're going to have a night where we do phrase and sentence work, where we talk about spelling. How do we engage children in meaningful repetition? How do we build vocabulary? We have a night focus just on syllables and syllable division. So many pieces of this chart you're going to get an introduction to. This is an infographic for my teacher friends who are thinking about the principles and the elements of structured literacy, who've taken other trainings. If you have not, just ignore the slide. You don't have to know everything on there to know what I'm going to teach you tonight. What we're going to learn tonight is going to be very simple, but those phonological skills are foundational and they work hand in hand with the letter sound connections for reading and for spelling. So much more simply, oral language development begins at birth. And today we're going to talk about how to help children develop the ability to hear the sounds in words. What are some things you can do with them to hear those sounds? And then tomorrow we'll talk about the sound symbol connections. So how can you bring the science of reading or the theory to life and help children train their brains to hear sounds, to blend sounds together, break sounds apart? And tonight we're going to talk about 4 different strategies that we use in the Brain Friendly Reading Program. Arm tapping. We're going to do an initial consonant sort, which kiddos love to do, and you can start that activity with children at 4 years old. Secret decoder game and I Spy. And if you're on here and you've played one of those games with children, feel free to drop it in the chat when we talk about it, about what your experience was. So the first thing we're going to talk about is arm tapping or arm spelling. For years, we called it arm spelling, but In Orton Gillingham, they also call one of their activities arm spelling. They use it for puzzle words. So if you have a word like said on your arm, you would say SAID and then blend it together, said. We still are using arms, but we're using them in a totally different way. That's a tool for children to be able to use whenever they need it, because their arms are always with them. Arm tapping enables a child to independently break words into sounds and blend sounds into words. And I'm going to show you what that means. And we use our arm where the first sound goes on the shoulder, the second sound goes on the elbow, and the third sound goes on the wrist. This is a multi-sensory approach that's also cross-body. So my OT friends will understand the importance of cross-body work. There's a consonant vowel consonant example here that if we say the word cat to a child, the child can practice breaking the word apart by putting the k on the shoulder, the a on the elbow, and the t on the wrist. And then they slide their hand down the arm and say cat. We're going to have a night where we practice doing this work so that you can practice it with 3-letter words, 4-letter words, and 5-letter words, and vowel consonant E words. But I want you to understand what it is so that when you see it, you have a sense of what's happening. When we're working with a child and the child is writing, or we're listening to sounds with the child and we break the word apart, at, we can ask them, what's at the beginning? Yes. What's in the middle? At. What's at the end? And we help the child to practice breaking words into sounds using this very simple but highly effective instructional strategy. I know you're already asking, what about words that aren't 3 letters, right? So I'm going to show you just a video really quickly of a little girl arm tapping a bunch of SH words, and she keeps the sh together. The sh would stay together on her shoulder or on her wrist. You'll notice that this is an experienced child, and she doesn't even get her hand all the way up to her shoulder. She's tapping like the middle of her arm. And as children become more proficient, they even use less of their arm. They'll tap just from their elbow to their mid forearm and their wrist. And older children will just make 3 little hot beats on right at their wrist. So as children become more proficient, they use less of their arm, but this is what it looks like.
Arm spell the word shop.
Shop.
Yes. Now spell shut.
Shut.
Rush.
Rush.
Do dish.
Dish.
So that's her doing many words with the same skill. That's part of the program, that when we teach a new lesson, we're focusing on a new skill, including skills that have previously been taught. And that's called making the work cumulative. We don't use skills that the child hasn't been taught. So this is clearly an SH lesson, and she's practicing arm spelling some words before she does the rest of her lesson. So now I'm going to show you one of the activities that you can do. This is very similar to an activity that can be found in a Montessori classroom, beginning with children around 3.5 to 4-year-olds are capable of doing this work. 5-year-olds love to do this work. 6-year-olds who haven't developed this skill are very eager to do this work as well. And it's very straightforward to be able to tell when a child is able to do this work and that you don't need to do it anymore. But it's a wonderful way to bring a child forward who, when you say at, and the child says apple, and you're like, how do I help this child? This is one of the activities to use. You can find a more extended video to watch on the Brain Friendly Reading YouTube channel that's called the Phonemic Awareness Sorting Activity. And in that video, I use envelopes with pictures in them, and we are sorting across many sounds in one envelope. You can scaffold this work by having 2 sounds, 3 sounds, 4 sounds, 5 sounds, 6 sounds. You can make it increasingly more challenging. You can do it with blends. You can do it with H brothers at the beginning. But the goal is to help the child begin to isolate the beginning sound. So they don't have to do the whole word. They can just isolate the beginning sound. It doesn't mean that you can't be arm tapping, modeling arm tapping for 3 and 4 letter words. And we're going to show you a game to be able to play. Many of these activities are ones that can be happening at the same time. You don't have to do just one and then wait for the other. Today, we're going to work with these 2 letters. Let's tap it on our chart first. Can you tap this 3 times for me? M, map, Do it again.
M, map,
And do it one more time.
M, map,
Great. And we're also going to use this square. C, cat, k.
C, cat, k.
And one more time.
C, cat, k.
Awesome. So you've done this before, where we're going to take our objects and we're going to say, what sound does this start with? This is a map. Can you pick it up? What sound does it start with? App.
App.
App. You want to find another one? That's a mat. Mat.
Mat.
Choose another one.
Man.
Man.
And can.
And yes.
Up. App.
And you're kind of an expert at this, aren't you? If you were stuck, you could arm spell it and think about what the first sound was. All of our objects came from this object box. These objects in here have 3 letters in them, just like the ones here. They're great for using for an initial consonant sort or phonemic awareness activity. So that's one way to do initial consonant sort. That was full disclosure with a child going into 4th grade. You noticed how I was prompting her when she was stuck. I just did it with her. You could also say my turn and you do it and then have them do it after you. And you notice that I continue to verbalize along the way, reinforcing her hearing that sound over and over again. And as I modeled and did the work with her, she grew in her confidence in wanting to do that work. So you can do this work with stickers. And then I also gather just real world objects. And you could go to garage sales and gather real world objects and have children be able to sort those objects by letters. Barbie dollhouse materials work really well. If you're in a school and you want to invest in it, Primary Concepts has many real world objects that the children can sort. And for children who are second language learners, they really benefit from having objects that look like the real thing, that are 3-dimensional when they're doing this vocabulary building. And you'll notice that we layer the vocabulary building into everything we do. We stop and help the child to understand about the words that they are working with. The next strategy that I want to show you is the secret decoder game for helping young children be able to hear the sounds that are in our words, to be able to break words apart into their sounds, and to be able to blend those sounds together into a word. And remember, those are the 2 key foundational skills that if a child hasn't developed them, they will struggle with reading, with blending, and with breaking words apart, with encoding and decoding. They're going to struggle with both of those. And that doesn't matter whether they're 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 or 9 or 10 or 11. If they haven't developed the ability to do that, they need to. This game I've played with older children, but we play it in an age-appropriate way. What you see on the screen here is just the instructions that are in the training companion guides. All right, so this is about a 5-minute video for the secret decoder game, and then I'll show you the version that you can use without objects.
Hi, I'm so glad you've come to be with me today. I have some things to show you. This is my mat. When things are on the mat, they stay there and cannot be removed until I say. This is my bag. It has a border and it has tassels. It also has a zipper. I can zip and unzip my bag. Would you like to try? Zip and unzip. I have some objects inside. Would you like to take one out? What do you think that is?
A mat,
Yes, it is a mat.
but it looks like a rug in my grandma's house.
It can also be a rug. Today we're going to call it a rug. It goes right here. Reach inside, get another one. What did you find?
I think it's a drum.
Yes, it's a drum and it has drumsticks on top. It goes right here.
Oh, is that a spider?
That's called a crab. It lives in the ocean.
Crab. That's a crab. I haven't seen one of those. Is that a bicycle?
Yes, it is. And we're going to call it a bike.
Here?
Mm-hmm.
That's a stone.
Yeah, it's so smooth.
Maybe it's a rock.
Well, a rock is bumpy and rough, but when it's smooth, it's a stone.
Oh. Like it was in the river. My brother found one like this before.
Yeah, it's very, very old. I can say things in code. And I want you to put on your listening ears and see if you can figure out what I'm saying. So listen carefully. Crab. Crab.
Crab.
Yes, that's the crab right there.
Crab.
Can you pick it up and put it in the bag? Good job. Listen again.
Drum.
Wow, you are cracking the code. Put it right in there.
Goodbye, drum.
Bike.
Bike. Bike. It's this one. It's upside down.
Stone.
Stone. Stone. That's this rock.
Yes, there it is.
I know it's this one.
Rug.
The rug.
Rug. Yes, that's it.
It's a rug.
Good job. You zipped it up.
I like that.
We'll play this on another day.
So that is the secret decoder game, and you can do it with that level of care. It's appropriate really for 4 and 5-year-olds working individually or in a small group situation. children in public schools who are doing tier 2 instruction, kindergarten teachers, those of you who are preschool teachers and even first grade teachers, you can have 4 or 5 children, a group of objects, and you arm spell the words. And when the children know what it is, they could raise their hand so that those friends who are thinking still have a chance to think. And we're not just the person who's the best at blending those sounds together as blurting it out. So some of my friends who've been using this in classroom settings, please go ahead and drop into the chat how you've used Secret Decoder Game. I've been in kindergarten classrooms with the box of CVC magnet tiles and put them underneath the document camera, and arm spelled for the children, had 3 or 4 under the document camera, and arm spelled them for the children and let the children raise their hands when they know it. And after I had almost blended it together, I would say, and what is the word? And the whole group would say the object's name all together. And the kids really enjoyed it. For some children, they didn't need it, but it didn't hurt them to practice blending those sounds together. For other friends in the classroom, they desperately needed that practice. 60 seconds of that work a day, the consistency of doing it every day is what will help to move those children up the ladder of reading. That practice of hearing the sounds and blending those sounds together. Another option that's object-free that teachers have reported playing with children and parents report playing with children any time of day, anywhere you're at, in the car, at the house, in the kitchen, outside, on a walk, in the woods, doesn't matter. That the goal here in playing I Spy is the same as Secret Decoder Game. You're going to sound out a word, and the children are going to listen closely to the sounds and blend them together to figure out the word. That is a skill that's a precursor for reading, and reading and spelling are 2 sides of the same coin. So anything we do to help reading will also support spelling and vice versa. So we can start with very simple CVC words. You can include words that have vowel teams. You can include words that have blends at the beginning or blends at the end. You can include words that are vowel consonant E, but it really just looks like this. We're going to play I Spy. I see something in the room. I spy an. And that one's a little tricky because A and N stick together. So you're kind of helping them blend it, which is fine. You can also spy in the room, The more space between the sounds, the harder it is. Did you notice in the previous video that the way we helped the child to practice blending was that we modeled the blending? The presenter modeled the blending of the word. So if you say book, and the child's like, no clue, start to blend the first 2 sounds together. Book. And you can start to alleviate this, take out the space between the sounds and put it together. And don't worry too much about trying to do it perfectly. There's no perfect way to do it. Think about the sounds that are in the word that you hear, break the word apart, and let the child see if they can blend those sounds together. And you could do it with words like in the kitchen. I see a table. Table. That's a 2-syllable word. I see a knife. Right? So you model the blending of the sounds together. The biggest piece that's most helpful to young children and struggling readers when you're playing these games with them is to give wait time. I just did those really quickly, but I might say to a child, oh, I see a wait. I'm waiting and letting them process. I might do it again at the same speed and let them process. I'm watching them. I'm looking at them. I am getting a sense of whether they are thinking or whether they're getting frustrated. And then I gauge my blending, my support with starting to help blend the word together based on the feedback for the child. Our lesson sequence in the Brain Friendly Reading program really starts with tapping the chart. These games or activities aren't really included in our regular sequence. These are ones that we use with children who need this preparation of phonological skills, who are either young or really struggling with blending sounds together. And they can be much older and struggling with that we can use these activities to help them while we're tapping the chart. But our lesson sequence that we're going to focus on going forward includes skills like tapping the chart, sound dictation, word study work we do when we're teaching a new concept, and how we engage children in meaningful repetition. We'll have a night for doing the syllable work next week. And on the last day of class, we have a kindergarten teacher who's been using brain friendly reading for about 1.5 years in her classroom. And she has 10 years of experience doing balanced literacy and is going to share with you videos and pictures of the children in her classroom using these kinds of evidence-based instructional strategies, along with some of the gains that she's seen across the skills that she's taught, and answer any questions that you have about how to implement this work with young children. You should have as part of your download the arm tapping and I Spy. Some of the slides that I presented are exactly on these on this download, along with some QR codes, why I arm tap, being able to see arm tapping in action. And then there's also a QR code if you feel so inclined to support We Shall Read along the way. We always are happy to receive donations. If you want to find more materials too, you can look in the Brain Friendly Reading shop. There's videos in the Brain Friendly Reading shop. You can find Brain Friendly Reading and We Shall Read on YouTube. On the We Shall Read YouTube channel, there's a Tools in 10 with bite-sized PD and some tips for tutors. If you're a tutor starting out, you might check out those videos as well. Of course, you can follow us on Facebook and Instagram and TikTok. I'm on TikTok. And if you get done with this series of training and you think you want more in-depth training, you can always take the asynchronous course through We Shall Read. It's grant funded. The Brain Friendly Reading training program is grant funded. And you'll receive a training companion guide, a digital copy of that almost 300-page book with all of the lessons and many of the games that we use in the Brain Friendly Reading program. So you can find out more about that at We Shall Read.
I really liked hearing all of the ways that some of you have implemented some of these already in your classrooms, because I think that's really powerful. Like when you go to a training, we're always like, yeah, that sounds great, but can it really happen? But the great thing about Kristen, what you said is these are so simple to do in a classroom. Like somebody, I'm going through to make sure I have the name right. I think Karen B was saying she likes to do like the I Spy when you're lining kids up and getting them ready for lunch, or when you're in a line, or anytime you want to make sure they're not fooling around, which we know is a lot. So you could get this, it's just super simple. You don't need anything prepped. Somebody else was saying, Rochelle was saying, when you were talking about the consonant sorting, where she puts them on a game board and she'll say a word and then can move the game piece. So there's even, you can take the basis of these ideas that were presented and just use them a lot of different ways, which I think is great.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's meant to be like a launch pad for you. When teachers understand what the needs are of the child, then you can start to create different ways to be able to work with this. You don't have to only do I Spy and Secret Decoder Game, but if you've never done this work before, it's a great place to begin. And then like Rochelle was saying, you know, as she worked with it, she was like, oh, I could also do this work in a slightly different way. And that's perfectly appropriate for you to be able to do that, to build out the many different ways that the children can practice with these skills. And I really appreciate the piece around, the low prep, low cost was one of our criteria for what instructional strategies we picked, right? If you can find Barbie toys to use as your objects, that's cheaper than the $500 box from Primary Concepts that has objects that children put in the pockets and take home.
Or you can just raid your own children's games at home that they don't use anymore, and then there you go.
Exactly. And I started out just using, I had scrapbooking materials I never used from decades of intending to scrapbook for my children, which did not happen. And I rated the scrapbooking stickers, and I just made stickers. And the child loved that they were stickers, and she went home and made her mom buy stickers at the dollar store. And she made her own, this one particular girl made her own sets, which is beautiful because it means that the work is really resonating with the child and right at their instructional level. I did notice that somebody asked a question here about how is there training for older learners and morphology training. So we layer this brain-friendly reading material, instructional strategies, not what we've done today necessarily, except if they're severely dyslexic or special ed kids, do they use this particular work that we did today. But the rest of what we teach, we use with children of all ages, including adults. So we start the work with the foundational skills, because what's very common with struggling readers, regardless of age or ability, if they're struggling, they don't have those letter sound connections, and they haven't developed the ear training to be able to break words apart into their syllables and break syllables into sounds. So those foundational skills are taught to every single person who works with a brain-friendly reading tutor. What's different is how quickly you move through that work and how proficient the person becomes, how quickly that moves into long-term memory, how automatic it becomes, and then you can use that as a bedrock to do all of the syllable division work and all the other work that we do. In this level 1 training, we don't do a lot of explicit morphological work, but we do some. So we teach a lot of suffixes. We have some places where we're teaching prefixes and some places where we're looking at base words and suffixes, but not the kind of morphological work that you might be thinking of that other people have designed, where you're thinking 3rd grade and up, 4th grade and up, we need to focus on learning that graph means right. And then we're going to study a bunch of words with graph. The issue is for struggling readers, and I wish I had 4th grade teachers here to tell you that with struggling readers, you can teach them graph and you can teach them infographic or graphite or grapheme or whatever words you want to, photograph, autograph. But if they can't decode those words because they don't know what the sound symbol combinations are, it's not very helpful. So I love morphology work. Undergird that with the systematic phonics work first, and the children can make much more use out of other morphological programs. All right.
Kristen, do you know, you would be more familiar than I am, is there a certificate for people who complete this training that do not work in Michigan? Do they get credit? Is there something they can get?
So if you're taking these 8 hours and you want a certificate saying you've taken the 8 hours for some sort of continuing education, can you let Megan know that, and we can reach out to you to work something out? We can give you a certificate of attendance for the 8 hours, but it's we're not taking attendance for every single person who's online. So if you want that, let us know and we can give you a certificate. I'm in a 4th grade at-risk classroom teacher with OG training from years ago. The kids that land in my room finally feel like they are successful when I use these things. That's fantastic, Tina. I'm so glad to hear that you're doing that. You might notice if you do the whole 8 hours with us that we've had many teachers who are OG trained from years ago and couldn't quite make the bridge between the OG training and their classroom work. And they have said over and over again, this is OG made simple. Both, I have a 60-hour Orton Gillingham certificate. I'm an Orton Gillingham associate. I am not certified by Orton Gillingham to teach Orton Gillingham, and I am not teaching Orton Gillingham. But this is an Orton Gillingham based program. I'm also a Montessorian with many certificates and hundreds and thousands of hours of Montessori certifications, and state certified as well. So I come at this, and so does the co-author of Brain Friendly Reading with decades of experience and a huge amount of training across many disciplines. So the pieces that are in here resonate with Orton Gillingham trained folks, because a lot of those instructional strategies are ones that are really highly effective and simple and straightforward. So I'm glad you're having success with that too. If you take the, for those of you in this who are taking these 8 hours who decide to take the asynchronous course, we do offer certification as a brain friendly reading interventionist. And once you are certified, then we have a place on our We Shall Read website where we'll be listing people who are certified as a brain friendly reading interventionist that has a picture and a bio. And the groups that we've most recently trained, those will be live in the next week or two. One of the beautiful pieces about the brain friendly reading program for parents who are on here is that you can learn how to help your own child and not have to pay somebody to tutor your child. That's a possibility. And then sometimes with some parents, I've had many parents train, especially during the pandemic, who thought, I'm just going to use it with my child. And then they were like, wait a minute, I'm a highly skilled reading interventionist now. I can start making money by tutoring all my friends' children. And they created their own small business accidentally. And they weren't necessarily, not all of them, people with education backgrounds. So one of the pieces that We Shall Read is tackling is helping to put these tools in the hands of people who are just well-meaning, well-intentioned folks that are willing to put in the effort to learn how to do the work. And we've certified a number of those who are now out in the community, particularly in Dearborn, Michigan, doing the good work of tutoring children and are already finding success with very happy parents. So that might be something that interests people here as well.